technologies I've been looking at that literally I could make a leopard print window if somebody dreamed that up. I mean, that's...
When you get those, I am getting a whole house worth.
Yeah, I mean, that's how robust some of this technology is. We've been looking at it. I think it's pretty neat. Not that I would ever sell a leopard print window.
Welcome to this special edition of the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, sponsored by Pella Windows and Doors. The Fine Homebuilding Podcast is a regular discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by producer Jeff Rose and Bryan Waring of Pella. Please email your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Well, Bryan, it is a pleasure to meet you. Thanks so much for being on the FHB Podcast.
Yeah, good morning. Really appreciate you taking the time to allow me to join.
Yeah, it's awesome. So can you tell me about what you do for Pella?
Definitely. So I am a product manager, product marketing manager actually is my title. So I manage the fiberglass brand for Pella called Impervious. So role, I mean, really you own kind of the strategy soup to nuts, in terms of, what we bring to market, how we execute it from a manufacturing as well as your typical marketing and sales approach for the brand.
Is this have you had other positions in the company or have you been working at this for the whole time?
This is, I'm actually fairly new to Pella, Patrick. I joined a little over a year and a half ago, got on board during COVID. So it was very interesting start to a new career. So I've been with the company for about a year and a half, and this has been my only role.
Have you guys been mobbed with business like other window and door companies I've heard about?
Oh, it's been insane. I mean,
yeah.
we can't build enough windows based on what customers want right now. And you throw supply chain and all the myriad of things, that are impacting our industry right now. And it's been a little challenging.
What do you, can you talk about are the windows and doors that are described as fiberglass, are they entirely fiberglass frames or is there metal in there? Can you talk a little bit about how they're made?
Yeah, sure. So a little bit about fiberglass. I mean, it's interesting. It kind of entered the construction industry in the 30s with insulation, right? So Owens Corning was kind of the original proponent of fiberglass back in the day, and you really didn't see it start emerging in windows till about the 1950s. And over the last 20 years or so, it's really emerged. In terms of thinking about what fiberglass is, compared to wood, vinyl, aluminum, which are more mainstream, our fiberglass is made in Murray, Kentucky, which is a very interesting site because we're actually vertically integrated. So we make everything from the raw material to the protrusion, paint, and assembly.
So does the glass in fiberglass, is that made specially for that application or is it recycled or where does it come from?
It's recycled. It's, you think about glass that doesn't get utilized, but, fiberglass is, like I mentioned, you see it in insulation, you see it in boats, you see it in cars, and then you also now see it in windows. And
is it a resin, epoxy resin or something that binds the glass fibers to form the frame of the window or door?
Yeah, so I just kind of walk you through the process, and then we do some things unique here at Pella, but it really starts with fiberglass rovings. So you've got spools of really thin strands that is then mixed with what I call a mat or, call it a structure type material to give the material structure. And it goes through what's called a pultruder. So a lot of folks are familiar with extrusion, which is pushing something through a die. For fiberglass, it's unique. It's actually pulled through a die. So it's pulled through a die, injected to your point with a type of resin where it forms a thermoset bond. So really what that means is that bond is unbreakable. So if you think about extreme temperature changes, other materials like a vinyl is a thermoplastic, you get variability as it gets really hot or really cold. But with that thermoset bond that you get with that resin injected into the fiberglass materials, it's a really strong material. And then typically, depending on the manufacturer, you can put a laminate, you can put a paint, you can put a powder coat on the raw fiberglass after the profile is created.
And are the strands all aligned in the same direction, or is there some variability? Like, are they crisscrossing, or are they just all following the length of the pultrusion?
Yeah, it depends on it really depends on the profile. So you're going to have, a bunch of strings, if you will, going into the die to make the profile. What I you might be referring to as the structural mat.
Mm.
And what we do differently at Pella, to your point, is we interweave that. So if you look at our structural mat, is actually interwoven. It's almost crisscrossed together, and that's what gives us that strength and durability. If you look at what other fiberglass manufacturers do, it's typically a random orientation. So fiberglass is just kind of all over the place on that mat. And we feel with that proprietary approach, that's what gives us the strength and durability versus other guys out there.
And I think you mentioned that the fiberglass stock is made in Kentucky. Is that what you said?
Yep,
Are
correct.
the windows made there too, or do you guys take the lineals and ship them elsewhere?
Nope. So everything's made in Murray, Kentucky. So like I mentioned, vertically integrated. So that Pella mat, we call it, we make that all in Murray, Kentucky. We pultrude all the raw materials into profiles in Murray, Kentucky, and then we do the paint and assembly also in Murray.
So why fiberglass? What are the advantages of that material versus other things that we use to make windows, like wood or aluminum, like you mentioned, even steel?
Yeah, it's a really interesting material because you really get all the compelling attributes that you like in other materials. So if you think about vinyl, you have low maintenance. You get that with fiberglass. If you think about energy efficiency that you get with wood, that's also an advantage you get with fiberglass. If you look at aluminum or even steel, you get a high degree of strength and stability, and that's also what you get in fiberglass. So it's a really interesting material that you get a myriad, or should say a conglomeration of all the attributes that people like in the other materials. So like I mentioned earlier, it's emerging, but I would say over the last 5 years, we've seen pretty explosive growth with fiberglass.
One of the things I've heard, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is that because fiberglass very closely matches the coefficient of expansion for glass, you don't have some of the problems that you do with movement associated, especially with like aluminum products, wood to a lesser degree.
Yep, spot on. If you think about expansion, it literally expands and contracts at the same way glass does. So you do not get that lack of stability that you get in other materials.
And the sash and frames, are they welded or glued or screwed together? How's that work?
So everything's really it's mechanically fastened, if you will. With fiberglass being so rigid, with that thermoset bond piece, you can't weld it together like you can with vinyl, as an example. So for impervy anyway, we use a corner key design where we inject that with sealant, and then we further fasten that with fasteners. So it gives a really strong corner. But yeah, you can't you can't weld using heat on fiberglass. You can with vinyl.
I remember when I first saw these products into the marketplace, to be honest, it was a competitor's product, but I remember there being somewhat limited sizes and offerings with regard to doors and windows. Has that changed? Is there a wider catalog like you might find with a wood or window or some other material?
Yeah, I think with the pultrusion process, it's not like a molder, right? You can't cut a block of wood and mold it into a profile and cut it to length as easily as you can with fiberglass. So, it takes a big redesign, which has been kind of the path we've been on with Impervy over the last 2.5, 3 years. Was a big redesign, and some of that is expanding sizes. The other piece is fiberglass is a really high barrier to entry, so it's really expensive to
You mean to
invest
start
in.
making them?
To start making it, yeah. And
Yeah.
assembly is very complex as well. So when you change design, you need to make sure the design's right, and you got to make sure your equipment. One thing, if you think about trend wise, we're seeing sizes get bigger. So as
Yeah.
we've released our redesigned platforms, we've increased size and made sure our equipment is capable of making bigger sizes.
Do you think that that'll continue to evolve your product offerings, going forward? Is it going to keep being more and more things you can get in this fiberglass material?
Yeah, I would say we're never going to have the customization of wood. It's
Yeah.
just inherent to the raw material and to some of the complexities of manufacturing. But we continue to try our best to meet the needs. It's I look at it. I look at fiberglass kind of like the bell curve.
Mm.
We need to make sure we're really good in that core, and then some of the tails on either side. It just we need to leave that for our friends on the wood side of the business.
One of the things I've observed in my years doing this is the options for prefinishing windows and doors have really, really made it better in terms of aesthetics, and especially for builders who then don't have to deal with painting window sash, which, as you know, is a hassle. Is that also true in fiberglass offerings? Can you have them pre-finished?
Yeah, you typically see on the fiberglass side, you see a much more limited offering on colors. Even for, I would say for Impervia, we offer three colors right now:
Hmm.
black, brown, and white, essentially. And if you think about powder coat, fiberglass is not an easy thing to coat.
Mm.
It's not like aluminum, it's not like wood, so it really takes, our powder coat. It could take a year, 2 years to develop a powder coat that hits our color spec, that meets our gloss retention, our durability requirements, and physically sticks in a way that we need it to fiberglass. I think what you'll continue to see, I'm even looking at some other technologies out there that would allow me to achieve, metallics and wood grains and different types of finishes. To your point, having that more customization or even a wider offering of color options outside of the black, white, and brown. So it is
Hmm.
something we're digging into on the impervious side.
That's interesting. I didn't know that fiberglass would be any different to coat than other materials. That's really interesting. So you mentioned the mat you guys use with your construction with the fiberglass fibers. What else makes your products different than the competition? Why would you tell me to buy your Impervia versus another manufacturer's fiberglass window?
Yeah, I think the material durability and strength side of things is really a big deal. As we think about what builders care about in terms of job site damage, they don't want to go back. They're really busy right now, especially in today's dynamics. Even homeowners, they want low maintenance. They want to put the window in and forget about it, right? They don't want to have to maintain it. They want to have to paint it. So that's a big piece of our value prop is that mat really enables that strength and durability. And we do a lot of work, one, to validate, those aspects in our lab, but also honestly to equip our sales team with claims against my competitors. The other thing I think you've seen, at least how I look at our redesigns. So I mentioned we've been on a big journey. So over the last 2.5 years, we've been redesigning Impervia. And as we do that, direct set as an example, we're trying to add features that
We
are
should tell
custom.
folks who might not be familiar with fenestration. Direct set means that you
Oh,
can make geometric shapes, right? And they're
correct.
commonly
Yeah. So
fixed.
yeah, direct set. You'll hear two. You hear a sash and frame. So that's a fixed window that has a sash and a frame, and then direct set is actually glass into the frame. So there is no sash.
And folks like these for their plow point elevations and other geometric
Yep.
designs, right?
You can do shapes, and you can get typically bigger sizes, and you just got a really clean sight line. So that sash doesn't distract from visible glass in your sight lines.
What about the like balance systems and stuff and the sash locks? Is that the same as on the wood products, or do those have to be specially designed for fiberglass?
Now you're going to see the same elements. So typically your bounces are driven by sash weight. We're going to have the same things on an impervia window as you would on wood or vinyl, where we got to be cognizant of bounce placement and so forth. Sash locks, it's really fun, and I can get enamored by designing my own. But there's a lot of benefit to having economies of scale. So oftentimes, if
Oh
there's
yeah.
not a specific customer need for me, we'll try to have similarities in our hardware, especially across our more mainstream products.
I think our builder audience would tell you to make everything exactly the same because it makes their life easier,
Yeah,
right?
yep, exactly.
So, what are the offerings? Do you have patio doors, casements, double hungs? Like, can you walk through the product line?
Yeah, so full myriad, we cover the whole, full gamut from an offering perspective. So you can get single hung, double hung, sliding window. that fixed sash and frame that I mentioned, casement, awning, direct set, shapes, bays, bows, and then sliding patio door.
Hinge patios too, or no?
At this point, we don't do a hinge patio.
What's the obstacle with that? Because that's what folks want, those, right? And
They do. Yeah,
yeah,
I would say it's prioritizations one. So we're trying to get through, currently we've redesigned our direct set casement, awning, and patio door. We're moving into hung and sliding products and have started scoping a hinge door. The problem you run into on fiberglass is you gotta be cognizant of reinforcement. So fiberglass is typically a hollow profile. So a patio door works perfectly fine because it slides. But once you start putting hinges on there, it gets a little more intricate on how you have to reinforce. So it's not as short of a putt as it sounds like it should be.
I like that expression. That's good. So you mentioned that the product line has changed. So what do you do to make it better or change it, or what has changed? I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so I think what you find at Pella is we're very diligent on understanding what our customers care about. So for me, I'm targeting multifamily, new, light commercial, and more semi-custom and custom home builders. So all of that is woven into what we do when we're redesigning. So recently, I would say I'll walk through really three main redesigns that we've done. Direct set that I mentioned earlier, that was size. So you talked about size. We expanded that to 70 square foot. So you can get a pretty large window if you can imagine 70 square foot.
What does that weigh?
Right. It requires laminated glass. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I bet. Holy cow.
Yeah, it's a big window. We also had an interior reglazability feature. So back to what's important to our customer. So a multifamily new, if you have to replace the IG, you can reglaze it from the inside. So you don't have to rent a lift to get up in a multi-story building to replace the glass from the outside.
And this is direct set you're talking about? Wow,
yeah,
that seems pretty
set.
Cool. How the heck do you do that?
Yeah, it's interesting, huh? Because I said it's set in a frame,
Yeah.
But how we set it in the frame, basically, dry glaze, face glaze it with a gasket, and then we essentially have a removable stop on the inside that you could take out to take that glass out and replace it.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Second redesign we recently launched was our casement awning. So that was a full platform overhaul. A lot of it had to do with aesthetic. So we're continuing to try to elevate our aesthetic to be that clean, modern, contemporary look.
Nobody wants like stiles and rails anymore, it seems.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. How can I see more glass? How can I get the frame and all of that out of the way? We also added which I'm pretty proud of, revolutionary new hardware system, called the Easy Slide Operator. So we've got a patent on it. Essentially, that allows you to open and close a casement awning window by simply sliding an operator. So no more, crank.
We talked to one of your colleagues about that on the wood window product line. Yeah, cool.
Yep. So we're the first brand to launch that. We are in process of looking at that on the wood platform side. But
on the fiberglass.
Yeah, I'm the first. Yeah, I'm the first one to launch it on fiberglass. We're looking at it right now to roll that out on some of our wood platforms as well. So, pretty excited about that. Garnered quite a few different, awards across the industry, which we're pretty proud of. But
the engineering is quite impressive. I gotta say, I thought that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then most recently we launched a redesigned patio door. Pretty excited, really nice, clean aesthetic. We actually developed a really low profile sill. So you think about trip hazard, different thing like that. And what's cool about it's 1.8 inches tall. So you typically see 2.5 inch to over 3 inch sometimes on a patio door sill. 1.8 inches tall, and we can hit DP 50 up to 8 foot. So we can get really high performance with a really nice, clean, low profile sill.
We should tell folks the DP rating is a measurement of a door's resistance to wind pressure and water infiltration, right?
Correct. Yep.
And are all the Impervia products DP 50, or does it depend on their size and operation?
I would say every product would hit up to DP 50. As they get bigger, it gets harder. So you'll see in some product lines as we get to the bigger sizes, they don't hit DP. They'll start to ratchet down to 45, 40, 35. But I would say for the mainstream, largest volume items that we sell, most of them are DP 50.
And can you do coastal products for folks in the Gulf Coast and other, high wind zones with impervia? Does DP50 get there?
It does. You think about Carolinas, you think about some regions. I mentioned the redesigns. We are redesigning with impact capability. So as we get down the road, and if we want to add impact impervia, it's a big market. Probably not ever going to get to the Florida parameters, but up to like New York and your Texas coast, we should likely be able to. At this point, we're not hurricane rated, but it is something we're designing the 2.0 platforms to be capable of down the road.
Cool. So, are there any special considerations when you install these fiberglass products compared to a wood or vinyl window? Do you need to be worried about tape compatibility and sealant compatibility in this stuff?
No, a fiberglass window is going to install just like a wood, just like a vinyl.
Does it have a nail fin?
Yeah, so it depends. We offer really 4 different types of installation methodology. So we have a block frame if it's just a replacement, pocket type replacement. We have a slide-in fin depending on application, and we have an integrated fin.
Can you talk about the slide-in fin? I don't think I'm familiar with that method.
Yeah, so frame's got an accessory groove, and the fin literally slides into the accessory groove.
Oh yeah.
So think about like a mold unit with fiberglass being so hard, and we're molding units together. We have to do a slide-in fin around the perimeter. And then we have the integrated fin, then a double wall flush flange fin on like our single hung sliding window and fix. So more West Coast oriented products, slide-in fins for stucco. So it's a lot of stucco you see in the Southwest.
Okay. Do you get a lot of sales in those parts of the country? It would seem fiberglass would be ideal for those hot, dry places.
Yeah, it's funny if you slice and dice up the U.S., vinyl and fiberglass are really strong, especially out west, and you're seeing it kind of trickle east. So yeah, we sell quite a bit. Northeast is more of a wood market, a lot of vinyl in the south.
Do you see that changing, or do you think the Northeast is always going to be wood windows and doors, or are we going to get smarter about that?
I think it's really early, and that's what excites me about fiberglass. We've been growing like crazy, but if you get our business insights team to cut the market up, wood and vinyl still own a huge piece of the pie, and wood is much stronger in the Northeast than they are elsewhere in the U.S. So I think it'll take a while to unseat those guys up there as the main material choice. But I think we're continuing to see fiberglass grow at a really rapid rate.
What are some of the things you see down the road? We talked a little bit about impact-rated products, the increasing options for color and pre-finishing. Mm-hmm. Do you see other things that we can expect to come down the pike?
Yeah, and I think I always ask myself, because I would say black, right? Black has been a hot trend. It's 60% of our volume.
Can I ask you, is it still hot? Is it gonna cool off? My friend and coworker were walking around looking at all the new homes, and you can tell they all have black windows.
Yeah, I don't see it cooling off necessarily, but I think you're starting to see folks that want to be the trendsetter and not have black. So we're seeing dark grays as an example start to emerge. It's close to black, but not quite black and different. I would say the other thing you're seeing is homeowners are spending more time in their homes, right? So comfort, energy efficiency, we're starting to hear that talked about more. And I would say for us, we put a lot of diligence in, because it's really hard as a window manufacturer. You can't follow every trend. So how do you look at a trend and determine when it's just a trend or it's starting to become mainstream? So that's something we spend a lot of time on. I'd say some other areas is IG. People are looking to innovate outside of having to make massive design overhauls. So how can you innovate with things like IG? So intuitive from a power generation, or changes tint based on sunlight changes. We're seeing screens. A lot of people forget about screens, but I can tell you, builders care about them. They don't want them damaged on the job site.
No, they're a complete pain in my rear.
Right. You don't want them damaged on the job site. Homeowners don't want their cats to scratch through them. I think what you're finding is people are trying to think through, how can I do things creative and innovative without having to massively overhaul my profile and my frame and my sash. So like I said, IG, screens, the coatings that I mentioned. So can we achieve wood grains or metallics or marble? I mean, there's some cool technologies I've been looking at that literally I can make a leopard print window if somebody dreamed that up. I mean, that's
when you get those, I am getting a whole house worth.
Yeah, I mean that's how robust some of this technology is. We've been looking at it. I think it's pretty neat. Not that I would ever sell a leopard print window, but that's the picture that the folks I was talking to was framing up for me about.
Isn't that the kind of the process where you actually dip the materials through these prints, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, sublimation is what it's called. So you base powder coat, and then you literally kind of inject or imprint a pattern or wood grain or whatever onto the surface. It's pretty cool stuff.
So another question just came to me when you were talking about improvements in glazing. Can you get all the various, very sophisticated types of glass in these Impervia product lines now, or is it more limited because of the, trying to give the most good to the most people?
No, I mean, we cover the gamut. I mean, an inch glazing pocket, we can do any triple IG in the new platforms as an example. So that was an enhancement that we made, that just as we continue to see the energy becoming more important. I mean, even Energy Star coming out in 2023 with some much more stringent standards. Yeah, we could do the full gamut.
Can you talk about that? So the U factors are going to change. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, they're dropping pretty significantly, across the different zones. And I think there's still a lot to. None of this is set in stone yet. I would say, the window manufacturing community is pushing back on some things, and Energy Star standing their ground in other areas. So it's still in development, but you'll see some pretty drastic changes where even in the north zone, likely is going to push a lot of window configurations to triple IG, if people indeed perceive Energy Star as important enough to pay for that.
Wow. So what is that going to mean for your, ordinary 3 foot by 4 foot double hung window? How much more is it going to cost to have that with triple glazing? Yeah,
I mean, it's probably $7,500+ I would say per window, give or take. And I think the hard part is how does that quantify the value to the customer? I mean, are they going to ascertain enough?
Are they going to know any difference?
Yeah. Are they going to save enough dollars on an annual basis to warrant that? We'll see what happens. Like I said, we're still learning. We're still digging in. We're still fighting back on some things. But ultimately, we will see a drastic decrease in U values and thermal SHGC in different areas of the country.
Wow. So there are still some markets that use single glass. Am I right about that? I'm assuming that's going to change too, right?
I haven't dug deep enough into that, but I would expect that, your single pane aluminum type windows and different other materials down in the South that you see, very cost effective, but it'll be pushing the envelope.
So do you got Pella windows in your own house?
I actually rent a loft building downtown right now, and I've got aluminum windows that frost up in the winter. They're not thermally broken, and I wish I had Impervia fiberglass.
Before we part company, what would you tell folks would be the best reasons to choose a fiberglass fenestration product versus another material? What is your elevator speech before we go?
Yeah, it's difficult because I'm with Pella and I have to be material agnostic, but with the passion I have for fiberglass, being the brand that I manage, I think it's one of those things where it's low maintenance. It's something that you can put in and forget about it. You're not having to repaint it. You're not having to swap it out if you see, the sash sag or become brittle or something like that. They don't rot. So I would say peace of mind is the reason I would buy fiberglass or push somebody to buy fiberglass. It's literally the window you can put in, you can forget about it.
And from a builder's perspective, once you put it in, you're done, right? It's finished on the interior, it's finished on the exterior, you're good to go.
Yeah, and I think, from a builder, just thinking about the abuse on a job site, that's a window that if you drop it, you miss a nail, you're not going to break through the frame likely and have to replace it. So it's got really good durability from a job site perspective.
I think that's so important. I mean, I can't tell you how many hours of my life I wish I could get back chasing down broken glass or missing screens or broken screens or whatever. Anything else you want to tell our listeners before we go?
No, I think I'm good here. again, appreciate the time to join. It was great to share about Pella and about our fiberglass material.
So if folks want to learn more about Impervia, how should they do that?
There's a ton on our website. A ton of information, both pro, for the builder and then also for the customer. If the builder's customer wants to go on and learn, there's a ton of information out there.
And I'm assuming your Pella showrooms would be well equipped to talk about these products also, right?
Yep. Any of our PDSN, we sell through PDSN. We have good pro dealer partners like BFS, Lowe's. So many places out there that you can get information on Pella, as well as our different window options.
It's been very interesting, Bryan. I tell you what, I learned some stuff. That was cool. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. My sincere thanks to Jeff and Bryan for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, and review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Keep your windows dry.